The regular meeting of the Mishawaka Common Council for Monday, January 22nd, 2024 will please come to order. Good evening. Those of you in attendance, we are happy to see you. Thanks for braving the weather to be here this evening. Before we begin, if you would, please take a moment to check your cell phones to make sure that you have placed them on silent and vibrate. And then as one of our standard rules, those of you who have hats on, if you would, please remove them during the meeting. We'd appreciate that as well. To those who are participating remotely, we wish you a good evening as well. Members of the public participating remotely are asked to place their microphone on mute during the meeting with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the meeting, I will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of submitting comments one person at a time. And all persons making a comment will be asked to first state their name and address for the work record. After completing the comment, members of the public are once again asked to place their microphone on mute. And we thank you all for your cooperation this evening. At this point, if you would, please join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence in memory of the family in South Bend that suffered a tragic loss as a result of a house fire recently. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hazen?
Here.
Mrs. Volker?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Mr. Benicki?
Here.
Mr. Emmons?
Here.
Ms. Hahn?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Violi?
Here.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Here.
All council are present in person.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of January 8th, 2024. Are there any additions or corrections? Then hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorial.
Yes, Mr. President, we have a letter from the City Plan Commission regarding their recommendations from their January 9th, 2024 meeting. Honorable members, a regular meeting of the Mishawaka Plan Commission was held on the above date, at which time the following petitions were considered. A resolution number 2024-01, a resolution of the City of Mishawaka Plan Commission approving a resolution of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana Redevelopment Commission, which approved amendments to the declaratory resolution and the economic development plan for the Consolidated Area Improvement Project. The Commission, with a vote of 8-0, recommended approval. Petition number 2023-27, a request submitted by 1635 Ironwood LLC requesting to amend the 12th and capital planned unit development by allowing fueling stations as allowed in C10 filling station commercial and the parking standards for C1 general commercial. The Commission, with a vote of 8-0, recommended approval. Petition number 2023-28, a request submitted by Gumwood Acquisitions LLC requesting to amend the Grandview Phase 3 planned unit development for increased building height, reduced parking setback, and pavement drive aisle setback, and outdoor open space for various uses. The Commission, with a vote of 8-0, recommended approval. This is signed by Donna Burkhart, Administrative Planner.
Thank you. This evening, we have no report of any special committee, so we will move into ordinances on first reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-02, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, is from time to time amended, commonly known as the Zoning Ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a PUD amendment to allow a convenience store with gas station and C1 parking standards, Lot 2 of Capital and 12th PUD minor subdivision.
Proposed ordinance 2024-02 will be assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-03, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the Zoning Ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is PUD amendment for increased building height, reduced setback, parking setback, and pavement drive aisle setback, and outdoor open space for various uses, lot number 1 and 2 of the enclave at Grandview Minor Subdivision.
Proposed ordinance 2024-03 will also be assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee. Resolutions.
Resolution R 2024-01, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving an order of the City of Mishawaka Plan Commission approving a certain declaratory resolution for the Consolidated Area Improvement Project adopted by the City of Mishawaka Redevelopment Commission.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing on proposed resolution 2024-01. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Mr. President, members of council, Ken Prince, Director of Planning and Community Development for the city. Tonight's presentation is not just for Resolution 2024-01, but also for your proposed ordinance 2023-59, which is the issuance of economic development tax increment revenue bonds, also for the project. So obviously, if you have questions on either, we're happy to take them. We know you have to have hearings for both, but we understand that these projects are tied together. So tonight, for the Grandview Phase 3 project, I'm going to provide an overview from the city perspective, from the administration, and then we'll have a presentation by Audra Saradsky, forgive me if I mess up the name, with Great Lakes Capital present the project in total, then Randy Rampola with Barnes & Thornburg, who's our legal counsel. We'll talk about the creation of the new TIF and also the bonds and where we're at in the process. And then Emma Adlam, who is with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. We asked her not to make the trip from Indy for the weather, but I believe she's called in and will be online to present the financial aspects of the project. So from an overview perspective, it's not typical for the administration to present on behalf of a private development project, but in this case, the project is a public-private partnership with the proposed bond issuance. The city is involved because of the nature of the project. The proposed project achieves a higher density, and it's based on the inclusion of a parking garage. It's very simply stated. The parking garage will be privately owned and operated, and the dilemma is that market rents don't justify the construction and operation of a parking garage associated with the project. The city's involvement also opens up the possibility of the developer applying for state READY funds, which the READY Phase 2 application process should begin this summer, assuming the local redevelopment authority is awarded funds from the state. The city is in support of creating a separate tax increment financing district where the property revenue from this separate district will go in to pay for the portion of the project. Basically, the tax revenue pays for a bond that's over a 25-year period for the project. Although the TIF investment is estimated at approximately $14 million, that only represents roughly a little over 8% of the anticipated $170 million investment that's being made. That being said, although it's a small percentage, this type of project is not financially feasible without this type of partnership. The benefit to the city is the mix of commercial and residential uses. As we see large economic development projects happening in St. Joseph County, you have both the battery project, the data center, and then you look over at Elkhart at the Amazon facility that's going to be open at some point. All these projects are happening, and we are located in the center of the media market and plan to benefit from what's happening in the surrounding communities. We want Mishawaka to continue to be the center of business and commerce and also the great place to live within the region. This project contributes to that. As Mayor Wood identified with the mill projects in downtown Mishawaka, in terms of competition for talent, people can live in many places, and there's a demand for luxury apartments with hotel-like amenities that are in close proximities to restaurants and shopping. These higher density projects essentially create new small-town niche markets. We've seen this in downtown Mishawaka, Eddy Street Commons in South Bend, connected to Notre Dame, and now Grandview project with this proposal is essentially uptown Mishawaka. In addition to the residential units and commercial amenities that most communities are competing for, the benefit to the city long-term is the greater assessed valuation that's achieved with the higher density development. Years ago, the city's refusal to allow outside storage on this property prevented a new Menards from being constructed. A large commercial retail store is permitted by right, so they could have constructed the Menards without the outside storage, so we're just using that as a comparison for the project. And for reference, the current assessed valuation of the Menards on North Main Street is about $6 million. The estimated assessed valuation for this project, if approved, is over $50 million, or or roughly the equivalent of 8 Menards going onto this property. It's significant. This type of construction, although more expensive, also provides a much more efficient use of the land. The added density is still served by the same amount of water and sewer main, and because you're building on multiple stories, even the stormwater retention requirement is comparable to the traditional retail development. Essentially, it's a much better, efficient use of the property. We get much more yield on it. As we hope you can see a continued evolution of retail, basically as we see the large boxes and we see a change in the retail environment, we're hopeful that this type of small-town niche opportunity continues in other areas of the city, not just for Grandview, but we're hoping over time that there is a Midtown Mishawaka, that there is an East Town Mishawaka, that there's a South Town Mishawaka. We think this is a beneficial model of project that can be replicated in other parts of the city. With that, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have on kind of the overview. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Audra for her presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Bernicki.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Prince, one of the things that comes to mind when I look at that piece of property is there's just that little bump out in the road that has really been a thorn in a lot of people's minds for years. Is there anything that between us, the developers, the utilities, is there something we could do to push that thing in a little bit? I mean, it's.
So, no, so
I know it's been a discussion for a lot of years.
it has, and really it's about the cost benefit. So yes, there is something we can do. When we went to widen Gumroad Road, essentially AT&T had a private easement on that property. It was not in road right of way. And there's a vault underneath it. And essentially it is well over $1 million. It was well over $1 million a decade ago when we expanded the road. Now it's probably $2 million essentially to relocate that vault if we were going to do it. So it's a cost benefit issue. Do we want to spend millions of dollars to relocate that vault is what it comes down to.
Well, I mean, for safety, you know, people driving, especially a day like today, you know, you can't see the lines, so everybody's jogging and jumping. I mean, it's just such you're driving, then all of a sudden you gotta go left, then you gotta go right. I mean, it's like a football move out there, so.
And those type of football moves are consistent throughout the city. I think the difference there is because it's a long straightaway.
Right.
We understand the predicament. I think it really comes down to the cost benefit. All the engineering standards have been followed with that curve. The only thing I can say is that it's odd. So it's not inherently dangerous except for people that aren't paying attention. It has been designed to engineering standards regarding that curve. So really what it comes down to is for that inconvenience, is it worth, let's say, $2 million to pay AT&T to relocate that vault so we can straighten it out? And we've had those discussions internally, and I can tell you that we just haven't reached the conclusion that it reaches that level where it's worth the cost to relocate it. It really comes down to that.
Well, yeah, and as we're looking at this big project, I mean, is now the time to kind of revisit that a little bit more seriously and see, you know, if it was $1 million a couple years ago, it's $2 million now, it's not going to go down. And so the reality is, you know, if we want to do something, probably sooner than later, is something to see if we can't, you know, work together to try to get that to happen.
I'll ask Christine Jamaros, our city engineer, to see if she can't reach out to AT&T to get at least a current cost on what that relocation would take.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much.
of course.
Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. I have a follow-up to Mr. Bernicki's comment or question. One of the questions that I would have about that little jog is, from a financial or insurance standpoint, what is our accident situation up there? Is it costing, from an insurance standpoint, is it costing in terms of people being injured, people, you know, people's lives? Is there anything that could justify making a change because of safety issues that we have a history of tracking?
Councilwoman Volker, I have not researched the accident history. I will say, though, that usually when we have problem spots, they're brought to us, and no one has brought repeated serious accidents for that location. That doesn't mean we don't have accidents at that location. It just means that it hasn't been brought to our attention in that manner.
Okay, I'll ask the police department.
Well, no, I'll reach out to the police department and I'll copy the council. I
Okay.
don't have any issue. I'm just saying tonight I don't have that information for you.
No, I wouldn't expect you to. I'm just saying that that would be something to look at, you know, if you were evaluating whether it was financially worthwhile you know, there's a cost to the city, but there's also a cost to the citizens and cost to businesses and cost to insurance companies. And so it might be a broader, it
Understood.
might be worth looking at it from a broader standpoint.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Prince, other than the TIF revenue bonds and all of that the city is potentially investing here, are there any other costs that are dedicated towards this project, infrastructure upgrades, anything like that, that will be in addition to that?
Not from a city perspective. So all the cost for extending any other infrastructure would be internal to the project and be borne by the developer.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Prince? Ken, I only have one question for you at this point, but some may come up as the evening progresses. But I agree with your analogy to the mill, both Phase 1 and Phase 2, and that appears to be apt based on the information that we've received. Can you talk about the parking garage component of this proposed development, and will it have the same type of public access that's available to members of the community across the street at the mill?
So unlike the mill project, this project is really being driven by the developer. So downtown, we have the park, we have the Riverwalk, and we had a demand for that public space. In this case, the public parking is going to be dictated. We have not asked as a city for public parking like a free parking garage. So they will have to manage it for the businesses and for the residences that are living there. And so how they do that, whether that's pay parking or free parking, or that will be entirely determined by the developer, not by the city, because again, it's a different project.
It is, and I'll acknowledge that, but I'd feel better about this proposal if there was going to be some component of public access to that parking, since the public's being asked on some level to make an investment, or us on behalf of the, we on behalf of the community are making an investment. So discussion with the developer, but my preference would be for there to be some limited public access to the parking garage.
I would ask auditor to address that in our presentation.
I'll let you defer on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Prince? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off mid-step there.
Okay. Perfect. Hello, thank you, Ken, for that great overview of our project. Mr. President, council members, my name is Audra Saradsky. I am with Great Lakes Capital. We are located at 7410 Aspect Drive, Suite 100 in Granger, Indiana, in Grandview. I am joined today by Matt Deputy, who's the in-house counsel with Great Lakes Capital, as well as civil engineer with Abinmarsh and city consultants, as Ken said, to provide you additional information. Perfect. We will be discussing the next phase of the Grandview development. Grandview is located on the northwest corner of Cleveland Road and Gumwood Road, and is currently considered, as Ken said, to be the northern node of development for the city of Mishawaka. We aspire to achieve what you all have achieved downtown, as evidenced by this building and the surrounding properties. This evening, we are asking the council to consider two things. First, we are requesting the designation of Block 200 as an allocation area. This allocation area is limited to the area defined on the site plan as Block 200. We will discuss this further, but as you can see on this plan, that's what you're seeing in orange. Second, we are asking the council to approve the bond ordinance, which is a $14 million bond, to be repaid solely from the property taxes generated by the components of Block 200, which again, we will get into more detail. We as the developer are purchasing these bonds, and repayment is based solely on what value we create, so the city has no financial obligation. More details on the bond will be provided by Randy Rampolla and Baker Tilly, as Ken said. So what are we trying to do? So the next phase of Grandview will consist of three primary components. Our intent is to be able to create a home for residents in all stages of life. As we've achieved with Phase 1 and Phase 2, we've been asked to provide these type of units. The first thing I want to talk about is the Enclave at Grandview townhomes. These are not part of Block 200, so would not be part of the TIF allocation. They are 66 for-sale residences. They are adjacent to the neighborhood to the west, on the west property line. They will have dedicated garages as well as walk-up entries. Our floor plans are 2 or 3 bedroom, and we have many, many upgrade options. Again, this is part of our Phase 3 overall development we're discussing, but outside of Block 200, so not part of the TIF. So Block 200 will be, as Ken introduced, the mixed-use multifamily units, buildings, which are primarily urban apartments and commercial, as well as the boutique hotel. This hotel will have customized food and beverage experiences, including, as you can see here best, the rooftop restaurant with the indoor-outdoor space that you're seeing at the top of the screen. I wonder if I have this. Is that following me? Right here. Each of these components will have amenities unlike what we've seen to date in our market. Most will be open to the community, who will be invited to join us by hosting special events, visiting the restaurants, or taking part in the different spaces that we're making available. All restaurants have been specifically designed to welcome neighbors, visitors, and residents both within and outside of the Grandview development. The hotel and apartments will have fitness centers, private dining and hosting spaces, as well as outside courtyards, balconies, and green spaces. This phase, as we've talked about, is made possible by structured parking. A key component of the structured parking is you can't see it. It is fully wrapped by building, and that building is complete with a rooftop resident clubhouse, pool, and courtyard, which you can see in this view. So if we move on to the site plan, you can get a better feel for how Block 200 lays out. You can see that the parking garage is a key component as what we're defining as Block 200. Again, that consists of the hotel, mixed-use residential commercial, and the parking garage. The hotel is what you're seeing in yellow and on the eastern side of the plan. It's planned to have 125 rooms with the rooftop restaurant we previously mentioned, as well as a ground floor breakfast and cafe space. And this is outside of the normal hotel, breakfast components. The light orange buildings that you're seeing are the 246 apartment residences. We have studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom floor plans, a new leasing office and commercial space, and again, we're looking to activate this green space. We think that this green space is a great component of this development and a key aspect of the community coming to visit. So within the green space, we would have commercial food and beverage options that are extensions of what's happening in the buildings around it. This space could host outdoor events such as galas, weddings, farmers markets. So what is the impact of a project like this? As Ken alluded to, the total investment we're looking at, which includes Block 200 and the Enclave townhomes, is estimated to be $175 million. This will have a significant impact on both temporary and continued employments. As we shared with the EDC, we believe that the completion of the project will result in the creation of approximately 90 new permanent full-time jobs. These jobs will have salaries ranging from $30,000 to $100,000, and they're primarily positions in the hotel operations and food and beverage. Beyond the permanent jobs, the project will result in approximately 300 temporary construction jobs. Salaries for these jobs will range from $40,000 to $70,000. And if you've been by the site, you've seen R&R, local subcontractor, was completing site work in coordination with your water tower project. We are looking to use the same general contractor that completed phase 2. This group is familiar with the site, the overall development objectives, and we feel that they lead a focused effort to engage local subcontractors. As you can see from these images and what we're sharing, we plan to use elevated materials that will complement what we've already done with phase 1 and phase 2. In preparation for this meeting, we've worked with the city to inform as many people as possible. We issued a press release in December, along with the city's public notices. We hosted a public information meeting on January 8th, which I know you all were unable to attend. We had 2 residents attend. They were very supportive of the project. Both were neighbors directly to the west of the property, which, as you know, in discussion with Menards, we heard from a lot. And we appreciated their feedback and feel that where we've landed is much better than where we were then. The city's participation, as Ken detailed, really facilitates the overall development. We don't want this to be a sea of parking. So the parking garage enables the apartments to be the densities we need, the commercial to have the employees and spaces for them, and then the public can park in the surface parking, which, as we all know, is where they want to park anyway. They don't like to go in the parking garages. So to answer your question about whether things would be open to the public, we're open to working that out. Our experience has said that we need parking spaces for apartments, and then we need to have spaces for the public to visit the restaurants. So we're trying to keep those spaces open for them. And then I can also respond to the AT&T Vault question a little bit. So we have dedicated the land. So if we go back to the site plan, you can look and see that this next phase doesn't get to the frontage spaces. So we've actually dedicated and left that land available for the vault to come in. So land we've purchased, we're not choosing to develop in hopes that we can work something out with that. Making sure I didn't miss anything. We really appreciate the city's ongoing partnership. As you all know, we've been working on this for years. We're really excited about what we're trying to do. We've gotten great feedback, and we appreciate your consideration of the requests that make this possible. Are there any questions I can answer?
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Ms. Hahn.
Hi. I want to thank you for releasing the press release and for having a meeting for the neighbors. That's really important that they know what's going on in their backyard. I did hear you mention for the enclave that people were asking for that. Is that people asking for homes for purchase?
Correct.
And where did those people come from? Are they retirees? Are they people now living in
So, I mean, what
Granger?
we've found, and this is kind of typical of all markets, is that you have your young professionals who move in and then they want to grow. They want to grow in the same place with the same amenities, and we didn't have a for sale option. We also have very few 3-bedroom options or larger units within the urban residences. That's not what fits in those buildings. So this gives people the opportunity to buy a townhome, live in a more residential type neighborhood without giving up the amenities that they're used to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your presentation, and also thank you for that meeting on the 8th. Do you happen to plan to have another one by chance, or
We are happy to.
any questions, or have you received any emails?
We have not.
or
So
phone
the
calls?
press release, we've given our email address, phone numbers, we've made ourselves available as much as possible. We have not gotten many questions about this project. And they know how to find us, they have before.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. I just had a quick question about terminology. When you use the terminology activated green space, what does that mean? It makes me think of activated charcoal.
Okay, good question. I don't know that that's a coined term. I think that's a term we've come up with to explain that this is not your typical garden-style apartment. So we're bringing amenities in, we're letting the food and beverage have an extension into the green space, which, as you heard, is something that we'll be talking more about at the February 5th meeting as far as how that use works. And the idea is that it's not just a courtyard or a park that the residents use. It's the communities can come on their golf carts, they can come with their bike, they can visit, they can get coffee at the cafe, sit outside. So it's not just a green courtyard. We have furniture planned, we have sidewalk plans. We're hoping that it could be used for, limited events. So that's what we're referring to with activated green space, but it's not in a dictionary anywhere.
Thank
It's our own term.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Carroll?
Thank you. I don't know if you answered this already in the literature, forgive me if it was asked, but do you have a target as far as prices for the townhomes or the average rents that we could expect?
So these will be luxury units. So prices for the townhomes are probably going to range from $500,000 to $650,000. That's going to depend on what type of upgrades they do or whether they do a more basic unit. Again, we are open to some of that flexibility. And rents will be similar to what we're already achieving in Grandview, so fairly high for the market.
Thank you.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you. Sorry for an additional question I'd
No
forgotten
problem.
to ask regarding the hotel. Will this be a national chain, or is this going to be
Yes.
independently owned and operated?
Nope, so it will have a national flag. We're not prepared to share that at this time, but we are speaking with a national flag for the brand, but it will be customized. So the boutique nature, bringing in the restaurant rooftop, some of the activation for the green space we want to do with the food and beverage will be specialized to this unit.
Okay.
So not cookie cutter.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Violi?
Thank you, Mr. President. You said that it's going to be, the rent will be comparative to the other phase that's already there. What's the capacity? Are you full there, 80% full, 100% full?
We are, actually, thank you for asking. So both Phase 1 and Phase 2 leased up very quickly from a residential standpoint, and we maintain a 97% occupancy and leased. And there's a waiting list for most units, again, which is why we feel that this is the right product to do next.
Other questions? And just a couple follow-ups. Thank you for your presentation. It was very thorough, and congratulations on the success of Phase 1, and we're excited to see learn of your interest in Phase 2. A couple of follow-ups with regard to the answer on the hotel operator. So do you have a signed contract with that operator at this point in time, or is it speculative who's going to be the operator of the hotel?
So I just want to clarify your question. So we have an agreement with the operator. The operator is different from the national brand.
Okay.
So there's a agreement being put into place for the flag that would come with the hotel. We need to get through the February 5th meeting before they're ready to sign, because
that has-
those amendments are required, as well as what happens today for them to move forward.
Okay, so indirectly, I stumbled across the question I was going to ask. You have, contractually, the operator is not obligated at this point in time, but it's subject to the February 5th meeting.
Correct. But again, we're talking about two different agreements. So we
understand.
we work with an operating entity for many of our new hotels, which is separate from the brand. So there's going to be a brand agreement for the flag as well as an operating agreement for the actual operator. So operating agreement is a joint venture we do with our projects regularly. So that is signed. The hotel flag is not finalized until we work through the amendments.
If, and I wouldn't anticipate these problems, but if the second stage of the transaction isn't consummated, what would be the next step to decide who the flag would be, if I'm using
Good
the
question.
correct terminology?
So we are fortunate in that we're working on several of these projects throughout the U.S. So we stay very close in contact with more than one hotel. We've actually talked to more than one about this site. So we have the ability to look at another national brand if we were unable to reach agreement with the one that's been working with us for the past 18 months.
So it wouldn't revert back to that mom and pop local operator. It's going to be a national brand you anticipate
That is our
one way or the
plan.
other. Okay. Then with regard to the comments that you made about construction in Phase 1 and then using the same general contractor in Phase 2, with regard to Phase 1, not this evening, but at your earliest opportunity, could you provide us with a list of the local contractors who were involved
Sure.
in Phase 1?
Yes.
And as well as those who were outside the area so that we can get a feel, and perhaps you know off the top of your head, what was the
Mm-hmm. I
breakdown?
can't rattle it off the top of my head, but I know we have had that. We've provided that previously, so I will just pull that back
And
up.
if you let me finish, I actually was going to ask a different question.
Okay.
Off the top of your head, do you have a feel for the percentage of local versus non-local contractors who were involved in Phase 1?
I don't off the top of my head.
Okay.
And again, Phase 1 was different than Phase 2.
Sure.
So Phase 2 is the contractor we're looking to work with, again, this time. And we'd be happy to provide that information to you. It's really based on who has the labor and who is qualified to do the work.
Then to that point, with regard to Phase 2, as much detail as your contractor can arm you with that you can provide to us with regard to what they anticipate will be the breakdown of Phase 2 of local versus non-local, that would be helpful as well.
For Phase 3.
Phase 3, whatever
So
phase.
Phase 1 and Phase 2 are complete.
Yep.
Two different contractors.
I'm sorry, Phase
same
3
logo.
then.
Yes, okay.
Let's talk about Phase 3, which
Perfect.
is, and my apology for screwing up the Roman numerals.
No problem. Just made sure I give you the right list.
Yep, whichever phases, you can provide us historical data on the use of local versus non-local contractors, and then any information that you can provide to us with regard to the anticipated use of local contractors in Phase 3.
Yes, happy to.
Thank you. And then last but not least, I appreciate your point with regard to the parking garage. I'd still ask you to take a look at that to see if there is some doable, certainly it has to be economically feasible, and it can't be to the exclusion of the residents and the other folks. And by the way, when I think about residents, I appreciate the use of the townhomes to buffer the neighborhood to the west from the other development. Thank you for integrating that into your preliminary plan.
Thank you.
But with regard to the parking garage, if you would consider whether there is some type of public access, you're right. I think many people are going to want to park in front of the restaurant that they're going to visit. But it seems to me like this is a development that's designed to engender a long-term stay almost. I'm having a drink at the hotel. I'm having dinner at a restaurant. If there are going to be shops, retail, whatever the case may be, there may be a longer-term stay. So although I would acknowledge the point that Mr. Prince made earlier that this is different from the mill, since there is some element of similarity, if you would at least consider some kind of limited public access to the garage, I think that would make some sense.
We are happy to do that. And to piggyback onto that, we are planning valet parking for the restaurant rooftop. So that parking would not be something where the community had to find it. They would valet their car.
Excellent. And I was going to ask the same question that Mrs. Volker asked about the activated green space, but it sounds like that will have some public component as well, not just for the surrounding area, but for Mishawaka as a whole, that hopefully there'll be activities that everybody can partake in, correct?
That is what we would like to achieve.
Okay. Well, thank you again for your patience with me and
No problem.
answering my questions and for the presentation that you've made. Any other questions? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Randy Rampola with Barnes & Thornburg with offices in South Bend. I just want to touch briefly on the two documents that are on the agenda. The first is, as Ken mentioned, the resolution approving the action of the Plan Commission, which in turn approved the action of the Redevelopment Commission at its December meeting to separately establish the Block 200 allocation area. And the point of establishing that as a separate tax increment allocation area is to allow then any increment that would be collected from the Block 200 area, the hotel and the apartments in that space, the increases in assessed value will generate TIF. That would allow that to be collected over the 25-year period, the life of the allocation area. That is important because the other item on your agenda is in fact the bond ordinance. As Ken indicated, the bonds would be issued, purchased most likely by the developer, and the developer would be paid, if you will, on the debt service on the bonds from the increment that would be generated from the project. So the resolution is simply approving the action of the Plan Commission, which approved the Redevelopment Commission. If you take the action tonight and approve it, there would be one final step for the Redevelopment Commission, and that would be to hold a public hearing and then consider for adoption a confirming resolution. The commission, by statute, can't hold its hearing and consider its confirming resolution until the Plan Commission and you, the council, act to approve the initial declaratory, which was adopted in December. The other document on the agenda is the actual bond ordinance itself, which, as was mentioned, authorizes upwards of $14 million of bonds. Emma Adlam, I think, will speak to the specifics of the TIF projections, but that is the amount that would be expected to be able to be paid from the increment that will be generated from the project as projected by Baker Tilly based on the information provided by the developer. A couple of components or pieces about that bond ordinance, primarily in Section 4, at the end of Section 4, it makes very clear that the bonds do not constitute a general obligation of the city, and so the city has, nor does the Redevelopment Commission have any responsibility to pay these bonds other than from the TIF revenue that will be generated from the project. And with all due respect to the developer, I like to use the example, if for some reason this project didn't happen the way we are anticipating it will happen, and therefore we do not generate the tax increment, and there's a shortfall, and the debt service can't be paid, the city bears no responsibility to that or for that. Likewise, it would have no effect on the city's credit rating. The rating agencies won't look at this financing one way or the other in terms of the analysis of the city's credit rating. Because this bond is payable as an economic development revenue bond. The documents themselves, the trust indenture, it's in bold, black, long paragraph because lawyers like words. It says pretty clearly that the city has no responsibility with respect to those bonds at all. And that's, so again, it's in the ordinance and it's in the indenture. The ordinance approves the form of the indenture and the financing agreement and authorizes the bonds to be sold to the developer. With respect to the bond ordinance, I should step back. The Economic Development Commission met in December as well, adopted its resolution and held a public hearing approving of the bonds, approving of the project, and recommending approval by the council of the same. As far as the timing on the bonds, this would be the final action with respect to the bonds if you adopt the bond ordinance, and we would then proceed to a bond closing. And to provide for the 25 years of tax increment, the tax increment will be generated upon completion of the project, which I understand is in early 2026. So we would anticipate the bonds not actually being issued until later in 2025. But as part of the incentive process, we would need to have these things done now, and then we would just put everything on hold until such time as we're ready to have the bonds issued. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
All right,
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Again, Ken Prince, I just want to, Patrick, could you go to the next presentation? This is Patrick in IT. And then Emma, are you online?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Ken, I can't see the screen. Would you be able to tab? Okay, hold on.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Emma, we're up with slide 1.
Okay, could you flip to slide 2, Ken?
Go ahead.
All right, and then Emma, if I could intercede, could you begin by stating your name and business address for the record, please?
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Emma Adlam. I'm a director with Baker Tilly. Our addresses are 8365 Keystone Crossing in Indianapolis. And thank you very much for letting me join remotely. I appreciate not having to make the trek up with the icy conditions. But I'm just laying out just a couple of brief slides summarizing this bond issue and really focusing on the repayment and the security. So this bond, I'm repeating some of what Randy said, but this is payable solely from project tax increment in the Block 200 allocation area that's being created by the Redevelopment Commission. The bond repayment, it's solely this project TIF. There's no other source of repayment, either city or RDC funding that's pledged to the repayment of the bonds. The bonds will be structured with level debt service to align with the TIF revenues, and the bonds will be purchased by the developer. And so there is no, and the developer will make the initial cash outlay to purchase the bonds, through investing in the project. And then as TIF is generated, we'll get the debt service payments over that 25-year period. Ken, if you could go to the next slide.
Okay.
So, thank you. So the maximum par amount of the bonds in the bond ordinance is $14 million. The estimated cost of issuance associated with the issuance is $200,000, though that's a high side estimate. Likely it's going to be lower. And then the developer would just have to incur about $13.8 million worth of construction costs for purchasing the bond issue. But the more important slide is the next slide. This chart compares the estimated project TIF to the annual debt service payments. So the area shaded and kind of in a light teal color, that is the estimated TIF revenues. And so from information provided by the developer, the project will come online in over a 2-year period. So it'll be partially assessed for taxes payable in 2027 and then fully assessed for taxes payable in 2028. Now, as Randy mentioned, the developer is requesting that the bonds are delayed, not issued in 24, but are actually issued in 25 to at least reduce the interest-only period. Because if you can see in years 25, 26, and even a little bit in 27, the TIF is insufficient to make the debt service payments. So what that means is the developer just does not get those monies back. The city and Redevelopment Commission are not obligated to make up that difference. It's just an interest-only payment that the developer does not receive because the TIF money is not generated. And then over time, you can see that there's a little bit of excess project TIF from the annual debt service payments. There's a little gap between the columns and the shaded area, and the developer can get reimbursed for the interest-only shortfalls in the first 3 years if there is excess TIF in the remaining years of the bond issue. So that is the end of my slides, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Hearing none, thank you for your presentation. I think you made a wise decision not to brave US 31 coming up here, but thank you for the information. If you would, please go ahead and mute your microphone again. With that, is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Please come forward once again. And then is there anyone, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Dave Wood, Mayor. I don't often get up and speak on developments, but this is a significant one to the city of Mishawaka. Certainly a significant investment, $175 million, but I think it says a lot about Mishawaka that they're here presenting this in the first place, that we're able to attract a project of this scale, this magnitude, and that is because we have been focused in strategically on making sure that Mishawaka is a great place to live, great place to work, and raise a family, and have a great quality of life. Well, this project not only complements that, but brings more of that to Mishawaka. When I travel the country to regions that are successful, they all have these. They have these not just once, not just downtown, they have them all over their region. As Ken mentioned, we have some significant economic development projects happening throughout the region, both west of South Bend and over in Elkhart, taking advantage of the amenities and the things that they do very well. This takes advantage of what we do very well. As I said, it's a great place to live. And so when I think of this, it is not just a great addition to Mishawaka, it really complements the greater region by doing what we do best, and that is provide quality of life with really a mixed-use purpose. This will not be the only one. We will have more that we'll be bringing over the course of the next few months. And so, again, I think that is because we are a great place to live. And we don't just enter into these things lightly. We've selected and work with great partners, too. So when I think of Great Lakes Capital, Baker Tilly and Barnes and Thornburg, this is the A team here. We've worked very well with Great Lakes Capital, not just throughout this phase, but on the previous 2 phases and before that even. They've acquired some land from us within this project area. We worked with them successfully to make sure that our infrastructure complements, not only serves the function it needs to serve for our citizens, but complements what they want to do. And for not only their property, but for the surrounding area. And so just a great partnership all around. So I feel very comfortable entering into a partnership, a continuation of that partnership going forward. So I think this, at the end of the day, is going to be a huge success for Mishawaka. And so I would encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Then is there anyone else physically present who wishes to speak in favor? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Thank you. Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? And hearing none, I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mrs. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
The resolution passes 9-0.
Ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-58, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is to rezone from C1 General Commercial to R1 Single Family Residential, 617 East Grove Street.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom is referred the matter of proposed ordinance 2023-58, report that they have examined said matter and, in their opinion, should be adopted. This is signed by the committee members present, and I move for its acceptance.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll now move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-58. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium. Is there anyone here to speak on 617 East Grove?
My name is Felix Martinez. I own the 617 East Grove Street. This was in the zoning commercial district, I guess. And we asking to rezone into residential single family, because was a short right in the front out of the street. So we want to close that and make a single family for living there. That's all we need to.
All right. Thank you. Any questions from the council? Mr. Violi?
I spent a lot of time in that home growing up. The Catanzarite family lived there. I was just curious, are you going to live in that home, or are you going to fix it up and flip it, or are you going to fix it up and rent it?
We try to live first there, then to make habitable the front. You know, when there was the
store?
repair, to make
Right.
a family living there too, and maybe let's clear up to renting or something. Yeah.
Okay, so for now, you're going to try to live in there, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hahn?
I think I heard you say that you are going to do some remodeling on the front that faces Cedar, that looks more commercial right now. You're going to change it to look more residential?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is the front.
Okay.
Front is Cedar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone in attendance this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. Is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question. Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 9-0. Proposed ordinance number 2023-59, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, authorizing the issuance of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana taxable economic development tax increment revenue bonds, and approving and authorizing other actions in respect thereto in connection with the Grandview Phase 3 project.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Budget and Finance, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2023-59, report that they have examined said matter, and that their opinion, it should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We'll now move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-59. Mr. Prince.
Mr. President, members of the council, Ken Prince, Director of Planning and Community Development. We would just like to ask that the testimony given for Resolution 2024-01 be repeated for the proposed ordinance number 2023-59, and we are all happy to answer any questions that you might have on the ordinance.
So noted for the record. Any additional questions for Mr. Prince at this time? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. Is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Thank you once again to everybody involved, not only the developer and our outside consultants, but Mr. Prince and the administration for the work that went into this. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 9-0. Proposed ordinance number 2024-01, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka amending Chapter 2, Article 2 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Personnel, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2024-01, report that they have examined said matter, and that in their opinion, it should be adopted. This is signed by the committee members present, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We'll now move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-01. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward. Seeing no one, I will add for the record that the changes that are being proposed to the council rules in many respects are grammatical in nature. There are a few substantive changes that reflect the council's practices with regard to how we operate our committees, as well as other typical actions that the council takes. But perhaps the most significant change that's recommended in these council rule revisions would be to change our regular meeting time from 7 p.m., as it was this evening, to 6 p.m. moving forward. And with that, I will once again ask if there's anyone present who wishes to speak in favor. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone present? I think I went in opposite order and asked for remote before I asked for people who are here. Is anyone physically present who wishes to speak in opposition? Then once again, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak? With that out of the way, are there any council members who wish to speak? And I want to thank Madam Clerk as well as Mr. Triple for their assistance in making these revisions. If there are no other questions or comments, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Beninky?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mrs. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 9-0.
Thank you. With that, we'll move into privilege of the floor. And at this time, members of the public are invited to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor. Seeing no one, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Thank you. With that, we will move into unfinished business, of which there is none. New business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Then I will note for the record that this evening, our friend and colleague, Mr. Hazen, presented us with a letter confirming that he is resigning his position on the Common Council effective January 31st. So while we all hate to see him go, the good news is that Mr. Hazen is leaving us to begin a career in county government as the new St. Joseph County Commissioner for District 3 as of February 1st. So, Tony, we wish you well as you embark on that new endeavor. I've enjoyed working with you these past 4 years, and all those years going way back when in different capacities that we've worked together. I'm sure you do a great job in the new position, but I appreciate the contribution that you've made to the work of the council these past 4 and a little bit of years, particularly the work that you did in conjunction with myself and others in public safety negotiations, and then the work that you and I did together with regard to readjusting the funding for the combined dispatch center in St. Joseph County to make sure that Mishawaka was treated equitably with regard to the financing of it. So thank you for your contributions to the council. Thank you for your contributions to the community going back to your years of service on the police department. And I wish you well as you begin your life in county government.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to say at this time, I want to thank you for all you've done and all the education you gave me on this. I know we go way back to negotiating the police contracts and that, but also all the council members that I served with for the last 4 years. I want to thank them. You guys have been a class act, and everybody up here, I just want everybody to know that everybody up here has done nothing but represent Mishawaka, whatever's best for Mishawaka. And I think that's hats off to that, because in today's politics, sometimes you don't find that. So it's been a privilege and an honor to serve with all of you, and I appreciate it. And I hope I can do better things for Mishawaka and the county now. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members wishing to speak? Mr. Mamalante?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank Mr. Hazen. Just kind of echo what Mr. Hicksonball said. Really enjoyed the last several years working with you here on the council, especially with the police negotiations and the contracts, and just for always putting Mishawaka first. I thank you for your time on here. Sad to see you leave, but happy to see you in the county, and we'll still be able to pick up the phone and give you a call and ask for some favors. So I appreciate the help and the effort and the work that you'll do here in the future. So thank you, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. I also want to, I don't want to take a lot of time, but I think we're really fortunate as a city to have you take this position, Tony, because you're so, you have so much experience and knowledge of what goes on in the city of Mishawaka and what's best for the city. And I think that it's really going to help us all, having a wonderful advocate. Obviously, you're speaking for the whole county, but a wonderful advocate for Mishawaka. So thanks for all you've done on the council. It's been fun. I'll miss you, but I know I'll see you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernicki?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hazen, it's been a pleasure. Known you quite a long time, and it's been fun. And look forward to seeing how well you can do with some of the other people in the sandbox on the other side of that river. So I wish you the best, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Mr. Violi?
On a personal note, I just want to thank Tony. The last couple of years, deciding if the right thing to do is to run for city council, I had many discussions with Mr. Hazen. Sometimes he tried to talk me out of it, and other times he convinced me that it was the right thing to do because it was a good thing for the city, and I appreciate your guidance, and I echo with everybody what they've said, that look forward to you working in the county and helping Mishawaka continue to grow. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Mr. Emmons?
Thank you, Mr. President. Tony, it's been a pleasure working with you these last 4 years, and also on your input with the police department, since you were a former police chief. And I wish you well as a county commissioner representing Mishawaka and surrounding area. So I wish you the best. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then for those who are regular attendees or viewers of our meetings, if you're concerned that Mr. Hazen is being gypped out of the prestigious resolution that the council passes when someone leaves and the ceremonial plaque that goes along with it, given the timing of his departure, those aren't ready this evening. But we look forward to inviting our friend Mr. Hazen back to a future council meeting so we can take care of both of those items.
Thank you.
And again, thank you, Tony. And is there any other new business to come before the council? Then hearing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.